Okay, good morning. So we are up to Shinyut Tes Seif Gimel. So we're now really working through the halachas of Beira, very geshmaka sugyas. We're now going to discuss today how do you define a mixture, and this is what someone mentioned yesterday, because that's the big question. What is the definition of a taruvus, of minim mixed up together? Where, because we know there are three conditions to Bora, that in order you've got to tick all three boxes to make sure there's no problem. It's got to be Eichel Metoich Psoles, it's got to be Biyad and Miyad. And the question is, what is Eichel Metoich Psoles? How do you define Eichel? How do you define Psoles? How do you define a mixture? So that's really what we're going to be talking about this morning. So Hoy Lefonov Shnei Minim, says the Mechabas Seif Gimel. Hoy Lefonov Shnei Minei Acholim Mu'uravim. Just before I start, just by the way, I keep forgetting to mention, we wanted to know, where does this appear in the Mishkan? So a dear friend told me that in Orach Shabbos, in the beginning there, it's actually not clear where is Bar in the Mishkan. So apparently in Orach Shabbos, he says at the beginning, in the Seder Afias Hapas, when he talks about making the bread, they would have bread, they would get wheat, and there would be pebbles and things like that, and they'd have to sort of take away all the unwanted elements before they would extract the grain and the pebbles and the chaff and all the rest of it. So there was Beira going on over there in the Mishkan. Okay, that's what he told me. Okay, so if a person has two types of foods, mu'uravim, mixed up in front of him, Beira echod, we know the score. Beira echod, you choose one, me echod, from the other one, or me niach lechol miyad, and you leave the other one and you eat it straight away. So for example, you've got peanuts and raisins, and you like peanuts and you do not like raisins, and you've got them all mixed up in a bowl in front of you, that's a ta'arovus. You take the peanuts, the eichel, and you eat them miyad. It's eichel metoich psoles, it's miyad, and it's beyad, and you're all good to go. Says, let's just do the Mishnah on that. U'meneach hasheni rotzelema the oisa sheroitz elechel ata choshev ka'eichel. That is the rule. What the thing that you want to eat now, that is called eichel. V'hasheni choshev psoles, and the second thing is called psoles. V'imkein sorich livra zeh sheroitz elechel miyad to choshev eichel. And therefore, you've got to select the thing that you want to eat straight away. That is called eichel. Ulaniach sheni bekara, and you leave the other thing in the ka'ara, because that's psoles, that's the way you do it. But not the other way around, to have a psoles mitoich eichel. Because otherwise, if you take the raisins out and you put them aside, you take the psoles away, that's psoles mitoich eichel, and that's also. To Chaim on also liver afilu ksheretz elechel hamin hasheni la'alta. Even if you want to eat the other thing straight away, that is not good enough. You've got to take the eichel mitoich psoles and not discarding the psoles. Okay, back to the Ramah. Hagar. Ushnei minei dogim. Now, the shaila is what is called the tarovis. We were talking about this a bit yesterday. Ushnei minei dogim, two different types of fish, mikri shnei minei ochlim. They're called two different foods. V'asa livra echad mechaverei ele biyade kadei l'ochlim biyad. So, say for example, you've got some some gefilte fish and some salmon on a tray, and you don't like gefilte fish, but you like salmon. So to take the gefilte fish and to discard it, you violated Beira. And if it's all the same thing, but it's two different types of fish. So therefore, if one is eichel, one is psoles, or you want one and not the other, then that is a shaila of Beira. So what have you got to do? You've got to take the bit that you want, that's eichel, for immediate use, miyad, biyad. Even though they're bigger pieces, there's a big chunky piece of gefilte fish and there's salmon or whatever, it's got two different types of fish. Even though the substantial pieces, they've got a din of a tarovis. But if it's one min, but if you've got just a tray of, say, gefilte fish, and the slices are cut in slightly different ways, there are some bigger and some smaller, that's not a tarovis, says the Ramah. And if you've got two different types of minim, and you select the gedolis mitoich ktanas, that's not considered an act of Be'erev. And if you select and you leave it for later, even for later that day, because you've stepped up on the third condition of miyad. Okay, let's do the Mishnah Berurah. Some very important halachas. La'achlan miyad, Yud Gimel, Sifkat and Yud Gimel. The way you do it is you select the eichel, the bit that you want, miyad, for immediate use. But don't take it for later. So, for example, let's say you've got a tray of fish, like I said, just described, gefilte fish and salmon, and you said, you know what, this will be nice for shalosh shudas. And you take off a piece of the salmon, which is oichel, let's say, and you put it on a plate for later. You've done a ma'aser boira. You've chosen the good from the bad, but it's not miyad. It's for later. So therefore, you violated boira. V'chol achas yudalad rotzalema demikol makom shaykh bezeh breira. Given she'ein musudaras kolmin b'fnei atzma ela muravim biyachad. If you've got, I'm picturing a plate. If you've got salmon, fish, gefilte fish, salmon, gefilte fish, just sort of laid out in a fancy way, it's all mixed up together. So therefore, choosing the one that you don't want or choosing one for later is a problem. It's considered a tarovis. However, if it's all the same min, but they're just different sizes, that's not called a tarovis, and therefore lo mikri breira, says the Mishnah Berurah Sifkot and Tesvav, im lo shektzas mehem elam tovim, unless of course some of them are not good. So for example, you've got a bowl of potatoes, roast potatoes, and some are a little bit burnt, or some of the gefilte fish is a bit bad or something. Then you got a tarovis. Im loishem ksas mehem einem tovim kolkach chatichas acherim k'mei chatichas acherim, like the other pieces kogain sheniktechu mikach habishol. For example, some of the pieces are burnt. Eze chatichas dogim, some of the fish is burnt. For roitz livros on shalonik dechu, and you want to select the ones which are not burnt. So then you got a shaila of boira. You got to select the ones that you want for miyad and biyad. Some are from a dead fish, live fish, and the one from a live fish is superior. So you bought it live, and there were some which were dead, and the ones which were live are superior. Then it's also considered two different minim. For roitz liver and you want to select one from the other. Because one is eichel and one is pseiles. For tzarich livra zeh sheroitz lechel achshav, and you got to choose the one that you want now. For domi mamish la'odin ma'abshin b'sif alef, and this is exactly the same as the case we had previously of the salad, where some of the lettuce leaves were good and some were bad. For tapuchim chamutzim musukim. Now, what about if you've got apples? Some are sort of chamutzim, they're sharp, they're bitter. Umusukim. Then you've got some apples which are good, and you've got them on a tray and on a dish. Yeah, like crab apples or something. Yeah, sour apples, and you've got some sweet and some sour, and that's on a tray. But how do you define it? You could say, well, it's all oichel, and you could say, well, they're all apples, and therefore it's not a shaila of boira. He says no. If they're considered two separate entities, or maybe not. So mistapik prima garden mikri min echodim lei. So the prima garden is masupuk, whether this is considered two munim. On one hand, it's all apples, it's all oichel. On the other hand, one is chamutzim and one is masukim. So the prima garden is masupuk. If they're so sharp, they're so bitter that they're not roy lechol, then have a bevada demil psoiles. Then it's for sure a din of psoiles. V'yesh b'zeh mishum issa breira, and therefore it would be an issa breira. V'afilu ne'acholim al de'at chag. Yesh b'zeh issa one. Even if they can be eaten, if there was not much else to eat and that's all you've got, they can be eaten al de'at chag. Still, there would be an issa drabanan of breira because it's got a din of psoiles. Now, we said before, just now, the Ramah says that if you've got two different types of fish, that's definitely a taruvus, and you've got to be mindful of boira. If, however, you've only got one type, for example, different types of fish, but they're just cut smaller and larger pieces, says the Ramah, we're not worried about boira. The Taz is worried about it. He says you can have one min and it's still a shaila of boira. I want the thin pieces. I should I should choose those. If I want the big pieces, that's my oichel. Then I should choose those because it's still shaykh boira with different sizes of food. Or just take the next piece, or to leave to the next thing. Just you're not bobby yoda. That's the important thing. By the way, when you clear up from a kiddush on Shabbos, I think the Stipler thing, whenever someone would say, I'm making a kiddush, I had a baby girl, I'm making a kiddush Shabbos, he would say to them, Mazel Tov, and then he would say, just be careful of boira when you clear up from the kiddush. What's pshat? Because you imagine you've got a table full of different things. The temptation is to organize it. I'm going to take this and these pieces, and you take the cake, and then you take the coke, and then I take the plates. Just bali yoda, just clear it up as you go along, and therefore there's no mice of selecting. That's why do as it like that. So it depends if it's a mice prayer. We'll see soon. It's got to be a real jumble of things. If it's a real jumble of things, you've got a shaila of boira, and then if I'm going through and I'm picking out the cups to put away in the cupboard for later use, I'm taking oichem, I'm taking psoiles, I'm taking biyad, I'm not doing miyad, because I'm not using these cups now. So you got to be mindful of bar miyada. Just clean the plates clean the table as you go along. Boira is a minefield. Okay, let's carry on. That if it's min echad, it's not a shaila of boira. V'da. The basat sli mavushal, fascinating shaila. Basat sli mavushal, when you've got roasted meat and cooked meat, mikri shnei minim minyan zeh. So say, for example, you've got a tray of meat on Shabbos, and some meat is roasted and some is cooked. V'cholshkein basav shalmini oifes mechulakin. And certainly, if you've got different types, you've got different types of meat. V'alkein tzrichin lizoy b'sudas gedolos shemenochem kam mini oifes yachad. You've got a tray of meat and different types of meats. Or berin on niach l'matzah Shabbos, and you want to select something. Say, this would be nice from Lav Malka. That is a shaila of beira. Sheyivru elu sheroitz nechol achshav v'lebach. You've got to only choose the things that you want for now. I.e., oichem etoich p'soles miyad biyad. Before we get to that, let's just do a couple of interesting things. Now, look at 18. This is very interesting. He says, "Begeder hachiluk shebein taruvos tapuchim v'chamutzim u'mesukim shesofek in the echshavos lemin echad." On one hand, we just said now in the Mishnah Berurah, the Pri Megadim was mesupuk, whether sharp bitter apples, chamutzim, and sweet apples are considered min echad or not. V'ilu legabi taruvos chelkei basa shemiksasim slim miksasim uvushalim kasim shem vaden echshavim l'shnei minim. How come when it says one roasted and cooked meat, we definitely consider them as 2 minim, but yet the bitter and the sweet apples we don't? What's the difference? So Bia Hagonim Shmuel Orach in Orach Shabbos shebishul v'tzli hem shtei metzias shonos. If you got roasted and cooked meat, it's 2 different entities totally. V'ilu chometz u'mosuk zerak tam shonos. It's just bitter and sharp and sweet. It's just 2 different tastes, so it's not the same thing. Okay, now what about different parts of meat? So if you look at 19, also very interesting shaila. Chelkei oif shonim. You've got different pieces of meat. Kagoin shukaim chaziv v'knafayim. You got that, the legs, the pulkalach, and you got the white, different types of parts of the meat. Shemu'ravim zebazeh nechleku aposkim nechshavim kaminem shonim. Hagonim Shlomo Zalman Auerbach kosov shenechshavim kashnei minim. Wow, Shlomo Zalman says that different types of meat, white and dark, are considered 2 minim, right? He says that one thing. Just tell you a cute story. One time, that years ago, this is a long time, my wife and I had this chus of being invited to Dayan for a Shabbos meal, and I remember sitting in the meal, and it was just a few of us just sitting in the meal. The Rebbe and one other couple of us, and the Dayan, and Rebbe said to Dayan, he goes, "Chanech, serve, would you serve the meat?" So fine. So he took the tray of the meat, and he said, and she said to him, "Chanech asked me if he wants dark or white." So he goes, "Fine. Would you like dark or white?" So I said, "Dark, please, Dayan." Fine. Ruchi, which one's dark? He said. So is that considered 2 minim? So Shlomo Zalman says it's considered 2 minim, right? So if it's 2 minim, then you got to give the dark miyad biyad. But not to put away the white to the side, because that's considered 2 minim. Rabbi Yashav says no, it's all considered 1. Okay.
How many pieces are on the plate?
Oh, we're going to get to it. So if you look at, I didn't do that, but let's go back to it. Menashe Maimi told me. Look at 15. Look at the second paragraph of footnote 15. Yeah? Or the first paragraph, 15. It's not clear exactly how you define a tarovus. It depends on the people. Now, next paragraph. So 2 or 3 pieces is not a tarovus, right? That we know is not. So 5 or 6, I don't know. Yeah, but it's got to be a bit more than just 2 or 3. It's got to be a jumble, right? Okay, let's carry on. I'm the second bottom line of the Mishnah Berurah on page Kuf Mem of this page. It doesn't only apply to foods. Any other shnei minim could go in kalim or begodim shaykh breira. Look at footnote 20 before you turn over. Shnei begodim zahim zeim elish tzeva shnei. What about you got clothes with different colors? So this is what we spoke about yesterday with the ties, yeah. So that's a great example I told you yesterday. The guy on Friday night is looking at his tie rack, and he sees a blue one, a yellow, and a red one. and he's thinking, what should I wear tomorrow? And the teenager's thinking, I tell my boys in Shia, I'm going to wear the blue one, the blue killer one, right? I'll wear that one. And Friday night, you take the blue one out from the tie rack and you put it ready for tomorrow. You've been over Bayra. Why? Yes. Biyad, yes, but not miyad. It's not for immediate use. It's for tomorrow. So you see that it's shaykh Bayra even for colors of different things. If you're, says Ramosha, if you're bothered by it, this guy's bothered by it. Right? So it's shaykh for other things as well. Turning over the page. Balkain, tzarich livro zeh hamin, sheroitz a little achshov, v'ashai yishar makoma. And you've got to do the one you want, that's the oichel, and the rest you leave, and it's got to be for immediate use. If you've got clothes hanging on the wall, or you've got to put away the other begodim, so I say, for example, let's say you've got a lot of ties, and you're looking for a particular tie. So to put away and to sort of sift through them to find the tie that you're looking for, that's okay. Because it's not a mice of removing the psoiles, it's just accessing the thing. Or for example, sometimes you go to a Shalom Zocher in the winter and it's raining, you take your coat and you left it on the settee, you came early, and you go 10, 20 minutes later and then suddenly there's a whole pile of them. So you got a whole pile of coats and you got to find your one. So to access your one is not a problem, you're looking for your eichel.
This is not a problem if you wear it straight away.
Right, but I'm saying that is it a jumble by pulling away the other ones? Is that removing the psoiles? The answer is no, because you're just accessing the one you want. So that's what we're saying. Let me just read that again. Just picture the Shalom Zocher scene, or the ties amongst a lot of ties in the tie rack. You just want to move the others away. That's not a problem of Bayra. You got a whole bunch of food on a plate, and your favorite item is underneath. I'll give you a good example. Your Friday night chulent, right? So you like the meat, you like the potato, you like the kiggle in the chulent, whatever it is, and you're sort of scouting around to find the bit that you want. Same shaila. That's exactly what it's saying. But your thing is masalik element that you want to sort of push aside the bits on top because you want to get the bit that you like. Okay, so that's an important cloud. If you look at footnote number 22, you gotta know that your tie or your coat is there. It's not a question of just sort of hopeful. Yeah, you've got to know that it's there. You're just moving them aside in order to access it. Okay, let's just finish off Gimel. Tez Zayin. Sheber Shachris Lechel Ben Abayim. So the Mechaber finished off. Yeah.
Why would he be bothered if he doesn't know for sure that his coat is there? Then it's opposite. He's not looking for.
So then you're just salting a mixture. Salting mixture is also better. Yep. Says the Mechaber, if you do a ma'aser and you leave it for later, is chayev. So again, because you've messed up on the category of miyat. Says the Mishmur Tezayin, shebeira shachris v'adin im hayazman muflug b'suda ben abayim. Then it doesn't have to be for tomorrow. It can be, you're leaving it for 2 hours time. It's not samach l'suda. It's not miyad. So you got a problem. Seder. Okay, we'll leave it there.
How's the coats any better than the chicken on the plate?
How is the coats any better than
moving them out of the way to get your coat that you need?
Yeah, but I'm picturing the chicken on the plate is orderly. You've got a plate and 10, 20 pieces of chicken, and you've got dark and you've got white, and it's
pushing the light pieces.
Yeah, but it's very accessible. It's very clear that you've got here's the white, here's the dark. I actually have to take the serving spoon, and take the dark, Lamashal. So it's not mixed up. I have to I'm not looking for. It's not hidden underneath. But either way, according to Shlomo Zalman, it's considered 2 minim, and therefore, if I like dark and not white, for example, then according to Shlomo Zalman, I should only take the dark. That's eichem t'chseres for miyad and biyad. But according to Rabbi Yashiv, it's considered 1 min, and therefore, it's not a burr situation. Okay, Peseda.